Hello students, this is Shelley Ohms back with Unit 2. Unit 2 has to do with rights and relationships, covers parts of Chapter 2, 3, 4, 5, and 9. Objectives are to discuss basic human rights, resident rights, HIPAA, OBRA, Ombudsman Program, CNA's role in promoting care partnerships, abuse, neglect, and theft, holistic care, and communication. OBRA stands for Omnibus Budget Reconciliation Act. It is a federal law passed by Congress in 1987. It was in a response to poor care and abuse in long-term care facilities. That's a point that you need to remember. It set minimum standards of care for residents, and it also standardized training for nursing assistant programs. Resident rights, I think there's 10 or 11 of these, I forget. Number 1 resident right is quality of life. They have the right for the best care available. Number 2, services and activities to maintain a high level of wellness. So they will develop a care plan, and the health should not decline as a direct result of poor care. Number 3, fully informed about their rights and services, legal rights and legal services available. An ombudsman is a legal advocate for the resident. Usually at every facility they'll have somebody designated as the ombudsman, and they are just one that kind of makes sure that we're not violating any resident rights. Number 4 is to participate in their own care, in their planning, in the care itself, and they are able to refuse care. Independent choices, personal care, what to wear, maintain their own physician, and how to spend their time. Number 6 is privacy and confidentiality during care, during communication, and regarding personal information. Number 7 is dignity, respect, and freedom. Freedom from abuse and restraint. Abuse must be reported. Number 8 is security of possessions. Personal possessions must be safe, and they should have control of their finances. Transfers and discharge. They should be fully informed and consent to being discharged or transferred. They do have a right to their own healthcare records. Number 10, they have a right to complain without fear. They have a right to visits, although right now apparently that right is not being honored because of COVID at any reasonable hour. They have a right to social services. HIPAA stands for Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act. It sets the standards for protecting privacy of protected health information, or PHI. It has to do with confidentiality. The guidelines for confidentiality is to not give out information on the phone, do not give personal information to visitors, do not share a medical record with anyone other than the healthcare team. You as a CNA would never hand over a chart to a patient or anyone else, unless it's a doctor. Do not photograph or share on social media. Do not bring family or friends to meet residents. Confidentiality in elevators, cafeterias, and hallways are a big time, easy place sometimes to accidentally breach confidentiality. A worker needs certain resident information to do her job. This involves the principle of, I left this in here because it really wasn't addressing where, but it's need to know. Only if you need to know should you be told things. Patient Self-Determination Act, or PSDEA, is a federal law passed in 1990 as an amendment to OBRA. PSDEA requires all healthcare facilities receiving Medicare and Medicaid funds to give adults during admission or enrollment information about their rights related to advance directives. Advance directives are legal documents that allow a person to decide care if there comes a time when they are unable to make their own choices. So advance directives, there are 2 main types. We have a living will, and then there is a healthcare power of attorney. A living will, the patient itself or resident fills that out themselves. It states the medical care a person wants or does not want in the case they become unable to make those decisions. A healthcare power of attorney appoints someone to make a medical decisions for them, and sometimes this is referred to as a healthcare proxy. There are different power of attorneys. You can be power of attorney over finances. You can be power of attorney over an estate, things like that, but it needs to make sure it says power of attorney over healthcare. Maslow's hierarchy of need. This is just a pyramid that shows, what our biggest needs are. Our biggest needs that have to be met are obviously the longest line there is physical needs, and the top being self-actualization. Growth and development, growth is an ongoing process. Growth means that there are measurable physical changes, and development, it refers more to emotional and social maturity. Physical needs are oxygen, food, water, comfort, safety, and freedom from pain. Psychological needs include love, acceptance, security, and self-esteem. Ageism is a prejudice toward or discrimination against elderly. Here are some common stereotypes of the elderly. Stereotypes means that they are not necessarily true, correct? So they cannot remember things. They are totally dependent of others. Older adults are not interested in sex. They do not like to leave their home, and they are grumpy or grouchy. Like I said, these are all stereotypes. They cannot manage their own money. They are less intelligent than younger people. They have no friends, and they have no interests. Ageism, these ideas are not true of most elderly. Research shows that most elderly are active and have interests. They exercise, continue to learn, work, manage their finances, and intimate relationships. Aging is a normal process. Elder abuse can be physical, mental, emotional, or financial. Assault and battery, we're just talking about legal issues you can get into in the healthcare. Assault is the threatening to touch a person without consent, where battery is actually touching a person without consent. Terms related to abuse, false imprisonment. In a nursing home setting, that could be restraining a person without a doctor's order, and involuntary seclusion, that could be separating a person from others as punishment. Those are considered abuse. Active neglect would be purposely harming a person by failing to provide needed care, and passive neglect would be unintentional harm by failing to provide the needed care. Negligence are actions or failure to act that result in injury. Example would be failure to put up an ordered side rail, and then they fall out of bed because the side rail wasn't up. Mandated reporter, as a CNA or any healthcare worker, you are a mandated reporter. You're required to report suspected abuse or neglect. IDPH, which is the Illinois Department of Public Health, has a nursing home, that stands for NH, this nursing home complaint line, and there's a number for that, and then we also have Adult Protective Services. Communication, moving on to communication, is an exchange of information. There is verbal and nonverbal communication. Verbal is spoken or written. Nonverbal is body language, facial expressions, and touch. Body language, we have negative body language and positive body language. We always need to watch our body language. Smiling, leaning forward when we're listen, nodding while a person is speaking are positive. Negative could be rolling your eyes, crossing your arms, tapping your feet, pointing at someone while you're speaking to them, or your hands on your hip can be considered negative body language. When you're questioning someone and you're trying to promote conversations, direct questions are yes or no answers. To encourage conversation, you want open-ended questions. So if you were asked, how to encourage conversation, it would be to not ask yes or no questions. It would be to ask open-ended conversation questions. Telephone communication, you're always going to start with a good morning, afternoon, or evening. Whichever it is, state the facility's name, identify yourself and your position, write down any messages, ask for the correct spelling of names, get the telephone number as needed, always say thank you and goodbye. You do not give out any information about staff or residents over the phone. Refer calls about residents' conditions to the nurse and ask them if they can hold and transfer the call. So sometimes you may answer the phone and it may be a doctor and he's getting ready to spout out an order. Well, you cannot take an order, so you're going to have to say, just a second, doc, let me get the nurse, okay? Barriers to communication. Hearing impaired. If someone is hearing impaired, you should face them, speak slowly and clearly in a low, pleasant tone. If they have difficulty understanding or you have difficulty understanding them, be patient, take time to listen, restate what they said so they can make clear that they're understanding. If they speak a different language, you may need to use pictures or gestures. Barriers to communications, avoid why questions, avoid just offering advice only with no input from them, avoid yes or no questions, do not use slang or profanity or cliches. Acceptable touch. We are hands-on. This is what we do. So personal care such as bathing, dressing, feeding, and shaving. Hugging if the resident permits or asks for it, holding a resident's hand when she asks you to. Unacceptable touch would be sitting on a resident's lap or asking a resident to sit on yours. Kissing a resident, hugging a resident who pulls away from you, inappropriate touching or rubbing against a resident or staff member. Communication challenges. Visual impairment. If they are visually impaired, you would use the face of the clock to explain positions of the objects. For example, if they're eating, you could say your mashed potatoes are at 3 o'clock. Hearing impairment, lower pitched voice. Residents should be able to see your face. If they are anxious, use touch only if the resident is agreeable. If they are angry or combative, you have to stay calm yourself. If they are confused, you need to get them in a quiet environment. Comatose, you need to remember that they still may be able to hear. One of the last senses to go is hearing. If they have a artificial airway on a ventilator or something like that, you may have to use writing notes or communication board. Professional boundaries, there is a video for you to watch on that. It's a really good one, and there's also a good video on HIPAA. Yeah, there's 3 videos there. They're all real good to watch. And that is the end of Unit 2. Thank you for listening.